Welcome to Design Diary, the podcast where you get to look inside my board game design notebook as well as what's going on inside my head. We look at a new word each day from the sense of mechanics, tone, theme, or inspiration for a full game. Today's word is bird dog. To watch closely, to seek out, follow, or detect. Now I know this word from the movie Bottle Rocket, which has been my favorite movie of all time for the past, 20 years or so. But Owen Wilson's character, Dignan, they're all fledgling criminals, and his code name is Bird Dog in the film. And it's cool, and it made me think of that immediately. And there's some elements of this, which I'll get into later, where it sort of inspires some design thoughts. But with millions of city dollars invested, citizens are bird-dogging the riverfront development project to its completion. That's one of the examples given in here. Another one is recommending changes to the police contract and bird-dogging the new multi-tiered accountability system. So in both these cases, it's people watching, people of authority in a close way. And I didn't go in that direction. I went in two different directions. To watch closely often means to observe carefully, watching for tiny details and things like that. But I jumped into the word closely, and I thought about watching something at a microscopic level. What does that mean? And I don't really know. Part of it was thinking players are trying to get from point A to point B by making tiny iterations one at a time. So small movements, almost microscopic, things that are hard to see on the surface. And if it's just straight, moving something, that's obviously easy to see and might require memorization or something like that. But if things were multi-layered and it took a few steps to move something, and you're doing those little steps along the way, and then boom, you make your movement. I'm choosing a little bit of a direction, I'm choosing a little bit of a speed, I'm choosing a little bit of a I don't know, and then the combination of those resolves at the end, and you make your tiny movement. But part of it could be players are trying to change or reshape that, where instead of going from A to B, now you're shifting and going to C, and A to B might not be the destination of the game, but it might be a smaller destination for a sub goal of sorts. So I had just players were studying what was changed and then trying to stop it and seeing if they were correct about the changes. So they'd have to, somewhere, jot down what they think was changing or make some sort of prediction or something along those lines. From a mechanics side, I wrote following another player's action is something that I love in games where it's done well. So like Tiny Epic Galaxies is one where you have, and I forget the name of the points, it's the little token, but you have X amount of points that allow you to follow, and player before me decides they're going to take this certain die result, and I spend one of those points to also take that die result, which is great. It keeps everybody in the game off turn and things like that. So I love any kind of follow mechanic, and I've worked on a couple games that have them, and it's great. Another thing I wrote was just recognizing a pattern, which is kind of going back to what we said before, but real-time pattern recognition is something that's probably hard for many people, and there's just certain people that are going to be better at that than others. But over time, in a game where you're making movements, once again, I feel like bird dogging has this little detective side to it. You're making movements, but you score for undetected groupings. So you make a pattern where, let's just say, and I'm just trying to think of, let's just use letters. My pattern, I have A, B, C, and D, and I go A, A, C, D, or whatever that means. If you were to, predict that I was going A, A, C, D, you've nailed all of it. But if I were to go, if you just predicted AA and I go CD on my own, that's two spaces that were unknown. Actually, it's three. A to C and then C to D. It's two movements. 2 movements, 3 spaces. Sorry. So I wrote down, if I move 2 spaces undetected, then I get a point. If I move 3, then I get 2 points. If I move 4, I get 4 points. And if I move 5, I get 7 points. So it exponentially grows with the further I can make it of a pattern that is unrecognized. And it doesn't necessarily have to be movement. It could just simply be the order of playing cards or shapes or taking things. But any sort of pattern that can be rewarded for the player performing that pattern, but caught by the other players that are observing that pattern, was what I was thinking. Themes. Obviously, some sort of special detective. That to me is watching closely. You're following. You're like a private eye, and you're following somebody who is a suspect or whatever it is. So I wanted to share a funny story about a job that I had where this came up. I worked at a law firm, and part of the law firm responsibilities are serving papers on a defendant. So in order to serve papers, you send a process server out to their house or their place of work, depending on where it is, and they hand the papers to them. Once they hand it to them, it's considered served, and then you can move forward with the legal process. Well, we dealt with lots of process servers over the years, and one of them just never had any success. And it got to the point where I questioned whether he was really even going to these people's houses and places of work. It was just, if you have a considerably lower success rate than everybody else, it was definitely something that I questioned. So a suggestion that was sort of tongue-in-cheek, but definitely tied into this, was having a process server that watched the process server, almost hiring somebody to, make sure this guy's doing his job. It was funny. It was a joke because it was just like, it became comical in how little success that he had. But the whole idea is, he was sort of our bird dog, and we needed a bird dog to bird dog him. Anyway, to think about that from a gaming sense is, from a thematic sense, I was just thinking, like just even the term "who watches the Watchmen," but a detective could be, have a personal interest in a case, and then like skewing the evidence, and who is your private detective that's watching the public detective, or anything along those lines. And it gets sort of political with groups that watch other groups and things like that, but it's definitely a thematic side of getting deeper into that bird dog nature. So my final thoughts are that there wasn't a lot here, but there were two parts that I want to take from here. Two things of note. One is that microscopic changes, anything at a very small level that adds up to a larger level, which is, I guess, any complex game is definitely made up of that. But being able to, watch what somebody else is doing, something just where it's very important what your opponents are doing, and how, any change of their minor changes could have to make, shift their plan. Which is just, it's very general, but that's what it made me think. And the second one was just pattern recognition in a hidden movement game with points for length of pattern, which I like. I like the idea of being able to, it's sort of a little press your luck with trying to go for that larger points, and not be recognized as doing so. So I like the sound of that as well. Let me know if it triggers anything for you, if you come up with anything for Bird Dog, or if you've seen the movie Bottle Rocket, which I love. Oh, and I never got back to Bottle Rocket. The thought that I had about that was these guys are trying to rob this cold storage place, and it's just not going well. But they all have these little code names, and to watch closely was one of the characters would sit outside of the place and observe before they committed their crime, and they'd sit there with binoculars and kind of watch. And I thought about some sort of any kind of big map game or whatever with just a piece that you can put down that covers the entire board but has the shape of binoculars open. and that's all you can really see on your turn. Is you get to use your information, decide where you want to place your binoculars, and you get to see what's right there. And then, moving those binoculars around. I like any of those games where you have the light and dark elements, where the lights go out, and you have the one with the candle that I just saw recently. Anything with a point of view being part of the game. So I just thought of these binoculars. Maybe you stick them on your face and put your head down on the map. I don't know. That's a whole side of gaming that can either go really well or go really terribly. But that's all I have for today. I'll catch you again tomorrow, and if you have any thoughts, please share them. We'll catch you then. All right, see ya.